Ava tightened her grip on the note as the receptionist, a woman with perfectly ironed hair and sharp eyeliner, eyed her with a mix of confusion and impatience. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, flipping a page on her clipboard without really looking at Ava. "My mom," Ava swallowed. "My mom was supposed to come clean today, but she's sick, so I came instead." The receptionist blinked, clearly thrown off. "You're the maid's daughter?" Ava nodded. A pause settled between them, not unkind, but heavy, like the air deciding whether to push her out or let her stay. "She's really sick," Ava repeated softly. "She said if you didn't come, your boss would deduct her pay. We need that money." The receptionist's stern expression loosened ever so slightly. She let out a quiet sigh and reached for the phone. "Wait here," she said, her tone gentler now. Ava stood stiffly beside the glossy counter, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. Everyone here looked expensive. Polished shoes, tailored suits, the kind of perfume that smelled like power. She felt like a misplaced puzzle piece, one that didn't match the picture. A few minutes later, a security guard stepped out of the elevator. His uniform was neat, but his voice was kind. "Ava, right?" he asked. She nodded. "Follow me. Mr. Hale has been informed." Ava's stomach twisted. Mr. Hale, the Billionaire CEO. Her mother had talked about him. Not much, but enough to know he wasn't someone to bother unless absolutely necessary. The elevator ride felt endless. Mirrors on all sides reflected her nervous face, flushed cheeks, messy ponytail, old jacket. She suddenly wished she looked older, braver, less like a kid pretending to do grown-up things. When the elevator reached the top floor, the doors opened to a hallway lined with tall windows. Sunlight spilled across the carpet like gold, too warm for a place that felt so intimidating. The guard knocked once on a door made of dark wood. "Send her in," a deep voice called from the other side. Ava's chest tightened. The guard gave her an encouraging nod. She stepped inside. The office was enormous. One wall was entirely glass, overlooking the city. Shelves filled with awards and documents lined another. Behind a sleek desk sat Michael Hale, mid-30s, sharp jawline, dark suit, eyes that missed nothing. He looked up from a stack of papers, surprise flickering across his face when he saw her. "No, not Maria," he said quietly. Ava shook her head. "She's sick today. Really sick." She unfolded the note with shaking fingers. "She wrote this for you." Michael motioned for her to come closer. She placed the note gently on his desk, trying not to smudge it with her sweaty hands. He read it silently. A moment passed. Then another. Ava shifted her weight, feeling the silent stretch. Michael finally looked up. "Your mother shouldn't worry about pay when she's ill," he said. "She's been with us for 4 years. She's earned her rest." A rush of relief warmed her chest, but only for a second. "But," he continued, leaning back slightly, "you shouldn't be here in her place. This building, it's not exactly safe for someone your age to be working in." "I can do it," Ava said quickly. "Please, we really need the money. I know how to clean. I help Mom all the time." Michael's expression softened, but doubt lingered in his eyes. "She really needed me to come," Ava whispered, voice cracking slightly. For a moment, Michael didn't speak. He studied her as though trying to understand how someone so young carried so much weight. Then he stood, walked around the desk, and crouched slightly to be closer to her height. "What's wrong with her?" he asked gently. "Fever. Coughing. She was dizzy all morning," Ava said. She tried to stand, but her voice quivered. She almost fell. Concern flashed in his expression. "Did you take her to a doctor?" "We can't afford it yet," she murmured. Michael inhaled deeply, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Ava, you shouldn't have to worry about things like this." "But I do," she said, meeting his eyes for the first time. "I really do." Something in the way she said it made the room feel smaller, quieter. Michael stood again, straightening his suit. "All right," he said softly. "You can stay, but not to clean." Ava frowned. "Then why stay?" "Because I want to help your mother," he said, "and I need to know more." Before Ava could speak, he opened the door. "Come." We'll talk downstairs. As they walked down the hallway, Ava glimpsed her reflection again, this time standing beside a billionaire. The contrast made her cheeks burn. But for the first time that morning, something inside her eased. Just a little. If you were standing there, watching that moment unfold, what would you have done? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if you're not sure what to say, just tap like. Sometimes that's enough to show that empathy still matters. Michael slowed his steps so Ava could keep up as they headed toward the private lounge on the executive floor. The corridor seemed quieter now, as if the building itself sensed her nerves. Sunlight washed through the tall windows, catching faint dust motes in the air, tiny floating things she'd never noticed in her mother's stories about this place. Ava walked carefully, afraid to touch anything. Everything looked too elegant, too expensive. Even the paintings on the walls felt like they cost more than her entire apartment. You don't have to be scared, Michael said without looking back, but somehow reading her silence anyway. I'm not scared, she murmured, though her voice wavered. He gave a small, knowing glance. It's okay. Most adults feel nervous their first time on this floor. Ava's lips twitched into the smallest, reluctant smile. When they reached the lounge, Michael held the door open for her. The room inside looked like something from a magazine. Soft leather couches, a coffee machine that hummed quietly, a small refrigerator stocked with drinks she'd never even tried before. Sit, he said gently. Ava perched at the very edge of a couch cushion, hands folded tightly. She looked like someone ready to bolt at any moment. Michael grabbed 2 bottles of water from the fridge and handed one to her. You're trembling. She shook her head. It's just cold. He glanced at the thermostat, set at a perfect 22 degrees. He didn't comment. Let's start simple, Michael said, taking a seat across from her. Tell me what happened this morning. Ava's eyes drifted to her hands. The bottle cap creaked under her tight grip. She woke up coughing again, she said quietly. Worse than yesterday. She couldn't even stand long enough to make breakfast. Her voice tightened, so I made her tea and helped her sit up. She said she'd lose her job if she missed today, so I told her I'd come. Michael leaned back slowly, absorbing every word. You're what, 14? 12, she corrected softly. That hit him harder than he expected. 12, he repeated, barely above a whisper. Ava, you shouldn't be worrying about your mother losing her job. You should be in school. I was, she said, but school starts after lunch on Fridays. I was gonna go after this. I promised Mom. Something in her eyes, earnest, unwavering, too old for her age, unsettled him. How long has she been sick? 3 days, Ava whispered. But she didn't get better. She got shaky. She doesn't tell me everything, but I know her breathing sounded wrong. Michael's jaw tightened. He'd seen his employees push themselves before, but Maria, she was one of the most hardworking people in the building. Someone who smiled even when tired. Someone who never asked for anything. He exhaled slowly. Why didn't she tell HR? She has medical coverage. Ava's lashes trembled. She said the paperwork takes too long, and the medicine costs more than we have right now. She was saving money for my school trip next month. Michael blinked. For a moment, neither spoke. There are moments, quiet, delicate ones, when a person's world shifts without warning. This felt like one of those moments for him. He stood and grabbed his phone. I'll arrange a doctor. Today. Right away. Ava's eyes widened. But we can't pay. He raised a hand gently. That's not your worry anymore. Ava's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the water bottle. And you, he continued, softening his voice, are not going back to clean offices. You're going to sit here, drink your water, and relax. You've done enough already. She hesitated, but Mom said I should work hard. She said people respect effort. They do, Michael said, but they should also respect children, and let them be children. A faint knock sounded at the door. The receptionist peeked inside. Mr. Hale, the driver is ready whenever you are. Ava blinked in confusion. Driver? Michael crouched slightly, meeting her eyes again, something he didn't often do with people. We're going to your home. I need to see your mother myself. Ava froze. Now. Now. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Part of her wanted to argue, but another part felt something unfamiliar, relief. Heavy, warm relief that settled behind her ribs. Michael stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and gestured for her to follow. As they walked back toward the elevator, Ava cast one last glance around the immaculate lounge room she knew she'd never see again. It felt strange, stepping into a rich world only to step right back out. Like touching a dream and letting it go. The elevator doors closed around them. Ava kept her eyes on the floor, trying to steady her breathing. Michael noticed. "Ava," he said softly, "you did the right thing." She nodded without looking up. But deep inside, she wondered if she truly had, or if she'd just dragged her mother's employer into their private struggle. The elevator descended quietly, the hum of machinery the only sound. Just before they reached the lobby, Michael spoke again, more gently than before. "You're a brave kid," he said. Ava's lips trembled. "I just don't want to lose her." Michael looked at her then, really looked, and something unspoken shifted inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years. "Tell me, has anyone ever stepped in for you when life felt too heavy to carry alone? If yes, type yes and share their name. Maybe gratitude can reach them in ways we never expect." The lobby was busier now, filled with echoing footsteps and the constant murmur of conversations. People in tailored suits glanced at Ava and Michael as they walked side by side, the billionaire CEO and a small girl with a worn backpack. The contrast was so striking that several employees paused mid-sentence. Ava kept her gaze low, hugging the straps of her bag. She wished she could disappear into the floor. Michael didn't seem to notice the stays, or maybe he did, but simply didn't care. At the entrance, the driver already had the car door open. It was a black sedan with spotless leather seats, the kind Ava had only seen in movies. "You can sit in the back with me," Michael said, gently guiding her forward. Ava hesitated before climbing in. The seats swallowed her small frame, soft and warm, unlike the cold fabric of the bus she usually took. She kept her hands in her lap, afraid to touch anything. "You okay?" Michael asked softly. She nodded, though her heart beat a little too fast. The car pulled out of the company driveway and merged into the bustling city. Ava watched the tall buildings blur past. The farther they went, the smaller the buildings grew, glass turning into concrete turning into chip paint and narrow alleys. Her world. Michael's expression changed subtly as he noticed the shift outside his window. He'd grown up in wealth. This side of the city wasn't unfamiliar to him, but it wasn't home. "How long have you lived here?" he asked. "Since forever," Ava said quietly. "Mom says it's not perfect, but it's ours." Michael nodded. "That's what matters." The roads narrowed as they approached Ava's apartment complex, an aging building with peeling paint and rusted railings. Strips of laundry hung from balconies, swaying gently in the wind. Kids played soccer barefoot in the courtyard, their laughter carrying through the broken windows. The driver parked by the entrance. Ava unbuckled quickly. "It's on the 5th floor. Stays only." Michael didn't flinch at the idea. He stepped out and followed her inside. The stairwell was dimly lit, the walls cracked. A faint smell of dampness lingered in the air. Michael kept close, letting her lead. Every floor revealed more signs of struggle. Old furniture near doors, shoes piled in corners, faint arguments from behind thin walls. By the time they reached the 5th floor landing, Ava was breathing lightly, but Michael had a hand on the railing, adjusting to the climb. "Are you okay?" she whispered. He gave a soft, surprised chuckle. "I'm fine. Just not used to stair marathons." Ava smiled, small but real. She led him to a faded wooden door. Her fingers trembled as she turned the key. Inside, the apartment was tiny, one bedroom, a sofa bed, a small kitchen. But it was clean. Everything was neatly arranged, a quiet testament to her mother's pride. A weak cough came from the bedroom. "Mom!" Ava called softly. Maria's voice floated back, faint and tired. "Ava, is that you?" Ava rushed to the bedroom. Michael followed, stopping at the doorway. Maria lay propped up against pillows, her face pale, her breathing strained. She tried to smile but winced. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I told you not to bother anyone. Michael stepped forward gently. Maria, you're very sick. You should have told us. Her eyes widened in shock. Mr. Hale. Sir, I'm so sorry. Ava wasn't supposed to. You don't need to apologize, he said firmly. You need help. Tears gathered in Maria's eyes. Tears of embarrassment, fear, guilt. I can't miss work. I can't. You can, he interrupted softly. And you will. I've already arranged for a doctor to come here. Today, you'll rest until you fully recover. Your pay will continue. Maria's lips parted in disbelief. I can't accept that. You're not accepting charity, he replied. You're accepting what any loyal employee deserves. Maria covered her face, shoulders shaking. Ava climbed onto the bed, hugging her mother carefully. Michael stepped back, giving them space. The sight tugged at him in ways he didn't expect, a quiet ache he hadn't felt in years. After a moment, Maria lowered her hands, looking at him gratefully. Thank you, sir, for coming all this way. Michael shook his head. Thank your daughter. She's the bravest 12-year-old I've ever met. Ava ducked her head, cheeks warm. As silence settled over the room, the old clock on the wall ticked steadily, filling the space with a soft reminder of time passing. Too fast for some, too slow for others. Michael cleared his throat gently. Ava, do you have school today? She nodded. After lunch. Do you want me to drive you? It's the least I can do. Ava opened her mouth, then hesitated, confused. Her mother smiled faintly. Go, Maria whispered. Is helping. Let him. Ava bit her lip. Only if Mom's okay. I will be, Maria said, brushing her daughter's cheek. You've done enough, Mija. Ava stood slowly, still reluctant to leave her. But she knew her mother needed rest, and she needed to breathe. As they walked out of the apartment, Ava turned back one last time. Her mother gave her a small wave, fragile, but full of love. When Michael closed the door behind them, the hallway fell quiet. Ava wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me, he said gently. But she did, because no one had ever stepped in for them like this. They started down the stairs, one slow step at a time, the building humming with distant life. Outside, the sun filtered through the clouds, casting a soft glow on the courtyard. And for the first time that day, Ava felt hope staring inside her again. Now I'm asking you, what's one small good thing you did recently? Share it below so others remember that kindness still exists. Your story might be the spark someone scrolling right now needs. The afternoon sun hung low, painting the streets in soft amber as Michael and Ava stepped out of the aging apartment building. The driver opened the back door again, but this time Ava didn't hesitate as much. She slid in quietly, though she kept her backpack on her lap like a shield. Michael settled beside her, loosening his tie slightly, something his employees rarely saw him do during work hours. But this day had already been far from typical. As the car pulled away, Ava stared out the window, watching the familiar world blur by. Her neighborhood always looked tired, but today, she noticed it differently. Maybe because someone from the outside was sitting beside her, seeing it too. Michael watched her for a moment. You're very protective of your mother. She's all I have, Ava whispered. The sincerity in her voice made his chest tighten unexpectedly. He turned his gaze forward, lost in thought as the sedan navigated through increasingly cleaner streets. When they reached the school, Ava hesitated before stepping out. Kids her age crowded the entrance, laughing, running, dropping backpacks onto the pavement. The contrast stung. They looked so carefree compared to the weight she carried. You don't have to tell your classmates anything, Michael said gently, sensing her unease. Just focus on being a kid, even if it's only for a few hours. She nodded but didn't move. A long pause settled. Finally, she asked quietly, do I look weird coming out of this car? Michael blinked. Weird? No. Why? Because they already think I'm different. His expression softened. Different doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes it just means stronger. A shaky breath escaped her lips before she stepped out. She turned back to him, voice small. We'll Will the doctor really help my mom? I wouldn't allow anything less, he promised. I'll check in later. Ava nodded and ran toward the school entrance, the wind tugging at her ponytail. Michael watched until she disappeared through the doors. He let out a slow exhale as the car began to move again. Something about that girl, her quiet resilience, her attempts to stay composed, unsettled him in ways he hadn't felt in years. Not pity, something deeper, something like responsibility. By the time he returned to the office, the doctor he contacted had already updated him via email. He skimmed the report quickly, but as he reached the final lines, his steps faltered. Possible early signs of pneumonia. Needs rest, hydration, medication. Condition manageable, but could worsen if ignored. Michael closed his eyes, rubbing his forehead. Maria had been working like that, cleaning offices while her lungs strained for every breath. A flash of memory hit him, his own mother coughing in their massive house years ago, ignored by everyone except him. He'd been 12 too, helpless, scared, watching adults pretend everything was fine. He shook the memory away. A knock at his door. Mr. Hale, the receptionist said. We placed the order for medication delivery. It should reach her by evening. Good, he murmured. Thank you. But the unease didn't leave him. It grew sharper as the hours passed, curling into something unforgiving. He tried to focus on meetings, reports, deadlines, the things that normally defined him. But his mind kept drifting back to that dim apartment, the thinness of Maria's breath, the fear in Ava's eyes. By the time the school day ended, he found himself back in the car without thinking too hard about why. When he arrived, students poured out of the gates, their laughter filling the air. Ava wasn't among them yet. He waited, unusual for someone with a schedule packed down to the minute. But he didn't care. When she finally appeared, shoulders small beneath her backpack, she stopped short at the sight of him. You came back, she said, almost surprised. I said I'd check in, he replied simply. A faint smile flickered across her face before fading. Mom, is she okay? He knelt slightly, lowering himself to her level. The doctor went. She needs rest and medicine, but she's going to be okay. Ava let out a breath so shaky it almost broke him. She climbed into the car again, quieter than before. As they drove home, the skies shifted colors, soft pink, gentle gold, the world slowing into evening. Ava kept glancing at him, as if trying to read something she didn't understand. When they reached her apartment, the hallway felt different, heavier, somehow deeper. Ava unlocked the door quickly, rushing inside. Mom, she called. Maria turned her head weakly from the bed. I'm okay. Mija, the doctor was kind. He left everything we need. Ava sagged with relief, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. Michael stepped inside slowly, feeling like an intruder in a moment that belonged to them. But Maria lifted her eyes to him, gratitude shimmering through exhaustion. Sir, she whispered, you didn't have to do all this. Yes, he said softly. I did. For a moment, something unspoken filled the room, a warmth that didn't quite erase the struggle, but softened its edges. Then Maria's voice cracked as she added, I didn't want Ava to worry. Michael's throat tightened. Too late, he thought. Ava listened quietly, eyes downcast, absorbing every word. And then the big reveal happened, the one neither of them meant to share, but couldn't hide anymore. She didn't just worry, Michael said, his voice low. She came to my office today so she could work in your place. Maria's breath caught. Ava's head snapped up, and the room fell still. If that moment hit you even a little, leave a red-hot hash in the comments. Sometimes one small symbol says what our hearts struggle to put into words. The silence in the room felt heavier than the city outside, pressing against the faded walls, lingering in the thin air. Maria's fingers tightened around the blanket as she struggled to sit up straighter, her weak breath trembling. Ava, she whispered, guilt and fear woven into every syllable. You went there? To his office? Ava looked down, twisting her fingers together. I didn't want you to lose your job. You were too sick. You could barely walk. Maria's eyes glistened, her expression breaking apart piece by fragile piece. Mija, No work is worth you risking all of this. Before Ava could respond, a fit of coughing overtook Maria. She pressed a hand to her chest, breath hitching. Ava panicked, moving to steady her mother with small, trembling hands. "Mom, don't talk, please," she whispered. Michael stepped forward, worry creasing his features. "You shouldn't push yourself. The doctor said rest." Maria gave a strained nod, easing back into the pillows. Her eyes remained fixed on her daughter, overflowing with a mother's helplessness, the kind that comes from loving too hard and having too little. Ava climbed beside her, curling close, her head resting gently against Maria's arm. She didn't cry, but her silence screamed louder than tears. Michael stood near the doorway, hands in his pockets, unsure if he should stay or leave, but unable to walk out. Maria turned her gaze to him, voice faint. "Sir, I'm sorry if she caused trouble." "She didn't," he said firmly, taking a step closer. "If anything, she showed me what strength really looks like." Ava peeked up at him. "And what responsibility looks like," he added softly. Maria gave a tiny nod. "She takes after her father." Ava stiffened. Michael paused, sensing a shift. "Your father." Ava kept her eyes glued to the blanket. Maria swallowed hard. "He passed away when she was 8. A shot of pain flickered through Michael's chest. "I'm sorry." Ava shrugged in that tiny, heartbreaking way kids do when they've learned to hide grief early. "It's okay," she said, though her voice made it very clear it wasn't. Maria smoothed her daughter's hair. Since then, she's felt she had to fill in the gaps. Michael sat on the edge of a chair, elbows resting on his knees. "She shouldn't have to." "I know," Maria whispered. "But the world doesn't slow down for people like us, sir. Bills don't pause for grief. Rent doesn't wait for healing." Her words were soft, but they hit like truth often does, without mercy. Ava's voice rose barely above a breath. "I just wanted to help." Michael exhaled slowly. "You did help. More than you know." Ava blinked, confused. He continued, "Most adults don't have your courage. You walked into a skyscraper full of strangers just because you thought it would protect your mother. That's not something many people, even grown people, would do." Ava swallowed, her eyes shimmering. Maria closed her eyes briefly, exhausted. "I didn't want her to feel responsible for me," she whispered. "She's just a child." Michael glanced at Ava again. "Then let me help you both. Not just for today." Maria frowned. "Sir, I can't accept more." "You're not accepting charity," he insisted. "You're accepting stability. Something everyone deserves, not just the wealthy." Maria hesitated, torn between pride and desperation. Her breathing grew uneven again. Ava clung tighter to her mother's arm. "Mom, please," she whispered. "Let him help." The plea in her voice broke something in the room. Maria nodded weakly, tears slipping down her temples. Michael rose, slipping his phone from his pocket. "I'll arrange for a nurse to check on her every few days. And a temporary leave, paid, of course." Maria pressed a hand to her mouth. "Mr. Hale, I don't know how to repay." "You don't have to." His tone softened. "Just take care of yourself. That's all." The small apartment seemed warmer suddenly, not from heat, but from something gentler, more human. A faint breeze drifted through the cracked window, stirring the curtains. Ava watched them sway, her shoulders loosening for the first time in days. But then, a question crept into her mind. "What about work?" she asked quietly. "Will they replace her?" Michael shook his head. "No, she's part of our team, and we take care of our team." Maria let out a trembling breath, her eyes closing again as relief washed over her. Ava leaned her forehead against her mother's shoulder, her small frame relaxing for the first time in days. Michael watched them, mother and daughter bound by struggle, love, and quiet resilience, and something inside him settled. Like he'd spent years looking at life through a window and had finally stepped outside. The room held a fragile peace. But as with all moments in life, peace was only temporary, and Michael knew the road ahead would demand difficult choices from everyone involved. Still, he stayed in that moment, letting it breathe. Letting them breathe. Be honest with me. After everything they've been through, do you think you could forgive the people who turned away when help was needed? Type forgive if you could, or never if the hurt would be too deep to heal. Michael stayed until Maria finally drifted into a deeper sleep, her breathing still fragile but steadier. The room settled into a quiet hum. The ticking clock, the soft city noise seeping through thin walls, the warmth of the bedside lamp casting gentle shadows. Ava sat cross-legged on the floor beside her mother, hugging her backpack to her chest. She looked smaller now, drained, as if the weight she'd carried all morning had finally begun to settle. You should rest too, Michael said softly, lowering himself into the chair again. Ava shook her head. I'm okay. But you've had a long day. I've had longer, she murmured, almost accidentally. Michael's heart tightened. No 12-year-old should say something like that. He leaned back, watching her as she adjusted the blanket on her mom's legs with delicate, practiced hands, movements of a child who'd learned caretaking far too young. It stirred memories in him, ones he'd buried beneath years of meetings and schedules. A memory of sitting beside his own mother when he was a boy, waiting for someone, anyone, to notice she was sick, waiting for help that never came until it was too late. He swallowed, clearing his throat to push the ache aside. Ava glanced up. Are you okay? The question startled him. It wasn't often someone looked at him with genuine concern, especially not a child. I'm fine, he said, offering a small smile. Just thinking. About work. About life, he corrected gently. Ava tilted her head, studying him. You look sad. Michael blinked, surprised. Do I? She nodded. Sometimes grown-ups pretend they're fine, but kids can see it anyway. He let out a quiet breath, part laugh, part exhale of truth. You're observant. She shrugged. Mom says noticing things is how we survive. Michael's expression softened. Your mom is right. A faint cough sounded from the hallway, but it wasn't Maria's. A neighbor peeked in through the partly open door, an older woman with worn slippers and worried eyes. Everything okay in here? She asked. Ava stood quickly. Yes, Mrs. Delgado. A doctor came. Mom's going to get better. Mrs. Delgado nodded, gaze shifting toward Michael with curiosity and a hint of suspicion. And this is? Michael offered a polite smile. I'm her employer. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh, well, good. Good that someone's looking out for them. The way she said someone hit Michael harder than he expected. After she left, Ava sat back down, swinging her legs lightly. People in this building, they care about each other. We don't have much, but we try. Michael nodded. That's more than many people with everything. Ava hugged her knees. Sometimes I think we live in a different world from everyone else. You do, Michael admitted gently. But different worlds can still meet. Like today. She looked up at him with tired eyes. For how long? The question struck deeper than she knew. Michael leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. As long as it needs to. A small spark, hesitant, but real, flickered behind her eyes. Just then, Maria stirred in her sleep, whispering something under her breath. Ava immediately moved closer, brushing her mother's hair back. Michael watched, and something twisted inside him. Not pity, connection. He stood slowly. I'll step out for a while. Let you both rest. Ava nodded but didn't let go of her mother's hand. As Michael walked toward the front door, he paused, looking back at the two of them, framed by the soft glow of the lamp, holding onto each other in a world that didn't always hold them back. He stepped outside into the hallway, leaning against the wall. He inhaled the cold air deeply, letting it steady him. The building was quiet, only distant TV noise and footsteps echoing from below. He slid a hand through his hair. Helping them shouldn't feel this personal, but it did. Maybe because he recognized something of himself in Ava's fate, something of his mother in Maria's exhaustion, something of his past, the part he'd never fully healed. He looked toward their door again. Maybe, he whispered to himself, this was meant to happen. The thought felt dangerous. Hope often was. Minutes later, Ava tiptoed into the hallway, looking up at him shyly. Do you want water or something? She asked. We don't have much, but... He cut her off gently. I'm fine, Ava. She shifted her weight. Thank you for staying. For coming back. For all of it. Michael crouched to her level, his voice low and sincere. You don't have to thank me anymore. But I want to, she whispered. And in that small apartment hallway, something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but quietly, like a soft click inside the heart. A moment that meant more than either of them knew. If you believe hope still finds its way, even through tiny doors in forgotten neighborhoods, comment Amen. Let's fill this part with light. Someone out there might need to see it today. Ava returned quietly to the bedroom, checking that her mother was still sleeping. Maria's breathing had softened into a steady rhythm, and for the first time that day, Ava let herself unclench. She brushed her mother's hair back again, a small ritual she'd done since she was 5, when she first realized grown-ups could break too. Michael lingered near the doorway, watching the tenderness in her movements. Something inside him tightened, an ache that had no name but felt dangerously close to something fatherly, something he hadn't expected to feel again. After a moment, he stepped softly into the room. She seems better. Ava nodded. She always sleeps more when she's sick. She pushes too hard. Michael swallowed, jaw firming. She won't have to push like that anymore. Ava turned slightly, eyes questioning. What do you mean? He inhaled, choosing his words carefully. I've been thinking. Your mother deserves stability, and you deserve to live your childhood, not fight through it. Ava lowered her gaze. Life doesn't work that way for us. But it can, Michael said quietly. Ava blinked, not understanding. Michael placed a hand gently on the back of the chair. Your mom won't lose her job. In fact, when she's better, I'm moving her to a different department. Ava's head snapped up. Different, but she's a cleaner. She has experience here, Michael explained, and she's trustworthy. I want her trained as an office assistant. Regular hours. Better pay. No heavy labor. Ava's breath caught. But she won't believe she deserves that. Then I'll tell her myself, he said. Ava stared at him, eyes wide and unsure. The way someone looks at a gift they've never been offered before. It's too much, she whispered. It's not enough, Michael replied. A strange silence settled between them. Ava glanced at her sleeping mother again. An emotion flickered across her face like a shadow struggling to become light. Why are you helping us? She asked suddenly, the question trembling out of her. People like you don't help people like us. Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. Ava, when I was your age, my mom was sick too. She looked up, surprised. No one helped, he continued softly. Not neighbors, not family, not the people who worked for my father. Everyone acted like everything was fine. And he swallowed. I promised myself if I ever had a chance to be different, I would. Ava's eyes softened, her guard cracking. You remind me of me, he said gently. The way you try so hard to be strong. The way you protect her. He nodded toward Maria. It's not your job to be the adult. Not anymore. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it quickly with the back of her hand, embarrassed. Sorry. Don't apologize for feeling, Michael murmured. Strong people cry too. Ava nodded, pressing her lips together. The room hummed with a fragile quiet. Michael stepped toward the door. I'll check on her again in an hour. You rest if you can. But as he turned to leave, Ava spoke in a small, trembling voice. Mr. Hale. He paused. Yes. Are you going to leave us after today? The question stunned him, not because it was unreasonable, but because of the raw fear inside it. Fear of being helped for a moment only to be abandoned again. He stepped back into the room, kneeling so he was eye level with her. I'm not going anywhere, he said softly. The relief in Ava's expression was so visible, so pure, that it almost broke him. A soft breeze drifted through the cracked window, lifting the curtains for a moment, letting warm sunlight spill across Ava's face. In that glow, she looked less like the tired, frightened girl from the office earlier, and more like a child inching her way back toward hope. They stayed like that for several moments, quiet, breathing, alive. until Maria stirred again with a faint groan. Ava rushed to her side. "Mom!" Maria opened her eyes slowly, weak but aware. "Mija, you're still here." "Of course," Ava murmured, brushing her mother's arm. Maria looked toward Michael next, her gratitude quiet but deep. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not judging us." "I would never judge you," he said. Maria's lips trembled. "Most people do, sir." Michael shook his head. "Then they've never known real strength." A soft knock sounded suddenly at the door, the nurse arriving with supplies, paperwork, gentle instructions. While she worked, Ava stayed pressed beside her mother. Michael stood near the window, watching as the small apartment transformed, not physically, but emotionally, like someone had opened a window and let hope drift in with the sun. When the nurse left, the room felt warmer somehow. Maria drifted back to sleep. Ava leaned against the bed frame, eyelids heavy. Michael approached quietly. "She'll get stronger soon." Ava nodded, voice small. "It's scary, but it feels like things might finally change." He smiled softly. "They will." Ava looked up at him, really looked, and for the first time, she didn't seem afraid of hope. Just before her eyes slipped closed, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." Michael felt something settle deep in his chest, a promise forming, quiet but undeniable. He reached out and gently brushed a stray hair from her forehead, careful, almost father-like. "You're not alone anymore," he murmured. "If this story has touched you even a little, don't scroll away silently. Tap like, not for me, but for the mother who fought through sickness and the daughter who carried a world too heavy for her small hands. Let that one click be your way of saying, 'I felt your struggle and I'm here.'" Night settled gently over the city, a quiet blanket of dim streetlights, soft shadows, and the distant hum of life continuing beyond thin apartment walls. Inside, the room felt warmer than before. The small lamp flickered a soft amber glow, casting gentle halos around the edges of the furniture, as if the home itself was finally exhaling after holding its breath for far too long. Ava had fallen asleep at her mother's bedside, her head resting against the blanket, fingers still curled around Maria's hand. Her breathing was soft, even the kind of peaceful rest a child should have had all along. Her backpack lay open beside her, homework half finished, pencils scattered, forgotten in the chaos of the day. Michael stood at the doorway, shoulders relaxed for the first time in hours. The sight before him, mother and daughter, clinging to each other even in sleep, stirred something deep in him. Something old, something tender. He walked quietly to the chair and sat down, letting the silence fill the spaces between his thoughts. Maria stirred first. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim light. She looked around, at her sleeping daughter, at the medicine neatly arranged on the table, at the quiet man sitting near her bed, and her chest tightened with overwhelming emotion. "Sir, you're still here," she whispered, her voice small and fragile. Michael nodded. "I said I would be." She swallowed hard. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," he replied softly, "by raising a daughter like her." A tear slipped down Maria's cheek. "She's been so strong. Too strong." Michael's gaze softened. "She shouldn't have had to be." Maria's eyes drifted to Ava's sleeping form. "She tries to take all my burdens. Even when she's scared, she pretends she isn't." "That's what brave people do," Michael murmured. "But bravery doesn't mean she should carry everything alone." Maria exhaled shakily. "I never wanted this life for her. I clean offices so she can dream bigger, so she doesn't have to settle for surviving." "And she won't," Michael said gently. Maria looked at him, uncertainty in her tired eyes. "How can you be so sure?" "Because now," he said, voice steady, "she's not facing the world alone. And neither are you." A quiet silence followed, not empty, but full. Full of gratitude, of unspoken questions, of new beginnings forming in the shadows. Maria hesitated. Why are you doing all this?" Michael looked at the sleeping girl again, then at the frail woman in the bed. His voice softened into something raw, something honest. "Because once, I needed someone to care too," he said. And no one did. Not when it mattered. Maria's expression shifted, understanding blooming like a quiet flower. He continued, I know what it feels like to watch someone you love fade and feel helpless to stop it. I won't let history repeat itself. Not for you. Not for her. Maria covered her mouth as tears streamed freely down her cheeks. You're a good man, sir. He shook his head gently. Just someone who remembers what it feels like to need help. Ava stirred then, eyelids fluttering as she slowly woke. She blinked sleepily, noticing both adults watching her. She sat up quickly. Mom, are you okay? Maria cupped her daughter's cheek. I'm better, Mija, because of you. Ava turned to Michael next. For a moment, she hesitated, then moved closer, standing right in front of him. Are you really staying? She whispered, voice trembling with leftover fear. Michael gave her the kind of smile he hadn't worn since he was a boy. Soft, real, warm. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Ava let out a breath she'd been holding for what felt like years. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Small, gentle, careful. Michael froze for half a second, then slowly, carefully, returned the embrace. It wasn't the hug of a boss comforting an employee's child. It was the hug of someone who had been broken once, holding someone who was still learning not to be afraid. When Ava pulled back, her eyes looked different, clearer, brighter, filled with a flicker of hope she hadn't dared touch before. What happens now? She asked softly. Michael glanced between them, mother and daughter, fragile yet fierce, and the answer came easily. Now, he said, we build something better. And for the first time, all three of them believed it. Because sometimes, the world doesn't change with noise or drama or grand miracles. Sometimes, it shifts because one person shows up when it matters and refuses to leave. Final moral, soft, warm ending. Life doesn't always give us equal beginnings, but it gifts us moments, tiny doors where kindness can step in and rewrite everything. And sometimes, the strongest families aren't built by blood, but by the people who choose to stay when walking away would have been easier.